Hello, and welcome to today's training video on Sage 300. Today we will be exploring the Accounts Payable module and specifically Vendors. Let's begin by opening up the Accounts Payable module and the Vendors screen found in the AP Vendors folder. To begin with, let's browse to our first vendor in the system by using the Next button. We can see their vendor number. Vendor numbers can be either alpha or numeric, or a combination of the two. We then enter the vendor name and a vendor group code. The vendor group code is set up separately in vendor groups. Vendor groups are collections of vendors with similar traits. These can be used in reporting or to differentiate different types of vendors, providing them with different default settings. The vendor groups will define the terms code, the account set, a currency code if you're a multi-currency company, and a sales tax configuration, among others. Setting up and maintaining account groups is outside the scope of this video, but you can select one of the options that has been defined. Many of the fields on this first screen are rather self-explanatory. You have things like your address, your city, your state or province, your zip or postal code, phone numbers, emails, websites, etc. We also have an on hold field, an inactive field. We can see when this particular vendor was first created and the date it was last updated. There is also a spot to put a business registration number. There are then several tabs here with more information on the vendor. We can look at the contact screen and we can see a contact's name, their phone number, and email address. If you have multiple contacts, there is a multiple contacts module available for Sage 300, and you can enter many contacts in the grid down here. These contacts can then be defined on whether they are going to receive AP letters, and if you have the purchase order module installed, purchase orders and purchase order returns. You can view the contact details by highlighting the contact and clicking the View Contact button, and there you can see their full details. You can also create a new contact with the New Contact button. On the Processing tab, we see several pieces of information that were actually set by the vendor group that was selected when this vendor was created. The account set, which primarily defines the accounts payable trade account to be utilized and the prepayment GL account to be used. The terms code, which bank to use by default, and which payment code to use. Now the vendor group is going to set defaults on all of these, but you can come in and change any of these values to a different value as needed. There's also an option down here to generate separate payments for each invoice. If you use the Create Payment function and have the Generate Separate Payments for each invoice check, instead of putting multiple invoices on one check, Sage will generate multiple checks, each with a single invoice. There is also an option here for delivery method. By default, it is set to mail, i.e., print out a piece of paper and mail it to the supplier. However, by using one of these options, Sage will in turn email your purchase order, your AP letter, or your PO return to the email address established either on the vendor screen, which is the first screen here, or if contact, this one, or if multiple contacts, these. Moving to the Invoice tab, we have a fair number of fields to work with here. Our first one is the ability to set up default GL instructions on invoices. Here, we are set to distribute by a distribution code. Distribution codes are set up during the general setup of the module and are shortcuts to specific GL accounts. Here, we are set up on this particular supplier to go to the inventory account. You can also directly just use a GL account and browse to your full chart of accounts, or use a distribution set. Distribution sets are collections of either GL accounts or distribution codes. It provides a way for you to assign an invoice to multiple GL accounts simply and quickly. Of course, you can also set this to a value of none and have no predefined value. We have a couple warning options in here, so we can have warning, error, or no message based on vendor and amount and vendor and date. Please note, the invoice screen has a hard control for vendor and document number. You can never have the same document number twice for a given vendor. Next, we have tax group. If you need to track taxes, sales taxes on purchases, you can use the tax group. Setting that up is the topic of a different video, but we can come in and select the particular tax group we wish to use, and then set up the given tax class. If you do retainage, and retainage is activated in the AP module, you can set your retainage percentage, your retention days, and your retainage terms here. If you are subject to 1099 or CPRS reporting, you may select that here, and several fields will appear, allowing you to enter the different values that you have for reporting 1099 or CPRS taxes. We have an optional field screen where you can have different user-defined or optional fields set up in the system. There is a statistics tab and an activity tab showing recent history on the account. Note, this history is aggregated, not individual transactions per se. There is also a comments tab where you can enter notes on the supplier. Let's put this in action and create a new vendor. Let's create vendor 9000. We're going to create Equation Technologies in the vendor screen here. We will give it a group code. Maybe it is service purchases. Okay, I've entered all my address information for Equation. Let's go over to the Contact tab, and then we can go to the Processing tab. Note that we have a Accounts Payable trade set up. We can change the terms to net 30, and we can define which bank that we want this to come out of. We're going to select Seattle Tacoma Bank. We can look at the invoicing, Pet California, and set them to be non-taxable. We'll change our GL account. I've selected as my predefined GL account for Equation, account 6130, Computer Services. I can update any of the optional fields I want, and I can see that my activity, since this is a new account, is 0. When I'm ready, I can hit the Add button. Now let's take a further look at some additional screens that might be useful when setting up a vendor. Our next one is Remit To locations. If we have multiple Remit To locations, i.e. delivery addresses where we want to send payment, we can use the Remit To function to do so. Enter in your vendor number, hit New, and then enter a code in the Remit To location. Then you can put in a new value in here, such as maybe a lockbox. You can set the Remit To location to inactive if needed, or default it to be the primary Remit To. When this is done, this will appear on payments and automatically send the payment to the address entered in here unless otherwise changed. We have a screen here called Vendor Activity. Enter your vendor number, and from here you can see key information about that particular vendor, including what is the current outstanding balance, the last invoice amount, the last payment amount. On the Aging tab, you can hit the refresh, and get an aging of your current bills with that supplier. And then on the Transaction tab, let's make this a little bit bigger, you can see all the open invoices and their pertinent information, including the amount, how much has been previously applied, what is the current balance, and so on. Also, you can hit the Document button and be taken to the underlying transaction that generated that amount. If you need to, you can hit the Fully Paid Transactions and the Refresh button, and you will see all the transactions that have ever happened on that particular supplier. You can also order the view of the information by different values. Let's order by document date. Let's set our document date to January 1st, 2020. I can hit the refresh button, and now I see things are sorted by the document date, and we begin in the year 2020. These different options can help you find historical transactions more efficiently. There is also a tab over here for payments. It has a similar order by control. And again, by hitting the document button, you can drill down into the individual document and check out its details. This concludes our tutorial on vendors in accounts payable. Thank you for watching and have a great day.